I was a publicist. I decided on my Christmas vacation I was going to try to make a film. There was a story that my mom always told that I remember being a part of, that when we were little and she was depressed, the three girls, that she would grease us up with Vaseline all over, make our hair pretty, put us in pretty dresses, have us all matching, and take us to the store. And she did that at a time when she was very depressed, because she knew when she walked around with her three beautiful, greased up hair, slicked down girls, that people would say, "Oh my gosh, your girls are so pretty. Oh my gosh, you're doing such a good job with those girls." And it was a boost for her at a time when she really needed it. So I made a short about that. And that kind of got me hooked.
Hi friends, and welcome back to another episode of At the End of the Tunnel. So I am extremely humbled and honored to have this week's guest on the podcast. When I first started this podcast in June of 2020, I envisioned a list of people that I would love to interview. And to be honest, this week's guest didn't make that list. Not because I didn't think she'd be a great guest, but mainly because I was trying to be realistic. And I just thought there's no way I would ever be able to have her on my podcast so quickly. But as they say, the universe is always conspiring for you. I certainly believe that. Other people may say if you build it, they will come. I don't know. Pick your axiom. Whatever divine forces were behind this conversation happening, I am forever grateful to have on my podcast the incomparable Miss Ava Duvernay. If you watched the criminal justice documentary 13th, or if you saw Selma, which is a film about Martin Luther King and the Selma March, it got an Oscar nomination for Best Picture. If you saw Disney's A Wrinkle in Time, or the Netflix show about the Central Park Five called When They See Us, then you, my friend, have experienced the work of Ava Duvernay. In addition to those amazing works of art, Ava also created and now oversees the production of her critically acclaimed series on Oprah's network called Queen Sugar, and she's got her own grassroots film distribution company, which I'll tell you more about in a second. So I've been a huge fan of Ava's for a long time. In fact, after George Floyd happened, I was telling all of the white people who kept reaching out to me saying they wanted to understand systemic racism, I said, just watch the documentary 13th by Ava DuVernay. And speaking of which, if you haven't seen it yet, definitely add it to your queue so that you can watch it as soon as you're done listening to this interview. As you'll hear in our interview, Ava grew up in South Central Los Angeles. She studied African American history at UCLA, and then she went on to work in PR for a very long time. And then after an emotional loss of a close relative, she decided to take a leap of faith into directing. And she started by making some documentaries and 2 feature films, all of which she shot on a shoestring budget in her off time. And she talks about the process of doing that. She also talks about how she didn't even pick up a camera until she was in her 30s. Clearly, Ava was on a mission to become a storyteller through film, but specifically, she wanted to tell Black stories. And she talks about how she had to downsize and sell off some of the things that she owned. She closed her company and all of the other sacrifices that she had to make along her journey to create the opportunities that she had in film and to have the kind of impact that she's been able to have as an artist. Since Selma, Ava has received tons of nominations and awards, but in my opinion, the biggest statement that Ava DuVernay has made is that it's never too late to do what you're feeling called to do. And once you make it, so to speak, it's your job to use your talents and your voice and your notoriety to help amplify the voices of those coming behind you, which Ava has done since the very beginning with her nonprofit film, arts, and advocacy collective called Array that she started in 2010, which focuses on distributing films by people of color and women. Okay, are you ready to hear Ava DuVernay's full backstory on At the End of the Tunnel? Me too. So let's do it. Without further ado, I am thrilled to introduce you to Miss Ava DuVernay. Ava, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I really love having you here. I'm excited to share your sort of origin story with my listeners and with the world. As always, I like to start these conversations off talking about childhood. My question to you is, thinking back to little Ava in Linwood, California, what was your favorite toy or activity as a child?
It's easy. Right. First of all, thank you for having me. Happy to be here with you. Hands down, Barbies. Now, let me clarify. Not just any Barbies. All the Barbies, all the cars that we would make ourselves. We had one car. I have two sisters. So we had three of us. My mother could only afford one car, one Barbie Corvette. I'm the oldest. Of course, I got it. But I can't leave my sister's Barbies without cars. So we would create cars out of shoes because they make great shoes. And then we graduated to skates because they had wheels. We thought we were geniuses. We were like, does everyone know that you could put the Barbie in the skate and roll her around? We would cut their hair, dye their hair, put makeup on them using ballpoint pens, create more mascara, full stories. And as I look back, it was really intricate storytelling all day, building the worlds, building the sets, rehearsing the stories. I mean, nuts, like a lot was going on. And so shout out to my sisters, Gina and Tara, who were my first crew as we played Barbies all day long.
What's the age difference like in you and your siblings?
You know, it's so funny you asked that because I was just talking to my mother about that yesterday, 24 hours ago. My mom said she was looking at some old pictures during quarantine, and she said, I forget how much older you are than them because in these pictures, they're littles, and you're like a girl. And I said, it just never felt like that was that big an age difference, but it's actually, and I said, oh, so is it 3 years? It's not 3 years, it's 5 years.
Oh, wow.
I thought it was 3 years. I said, yeah, we're like 3 years apart. My mom said, you're not 3 years apart from Gina, you're 5 years. I said, no, we're not. We got out calculators. I said, that's not true. Literally, she said, Ava, I had you. I understand you know a lot of things, but I know when I had my children and you're 5 years apart. And so we're 4.5 years apart, depending on the year, on the month. But that was a big difference. And then my brothers, she had them when I was 15 and 16. So it's a big, big difference between us all. We don't feel, in your family, you don't feel those differences.
Were you a typical oldest sibling where you kind of took a leadership role and taught them the ways of the world and all of that?
Yes. We were latchkey key kids, me and my sisters. My mother, before she met my father, he was not my biological father, but he was my spiritual father, my father. Before she met him, when I was, I think, maybe 8, she was a single mom, and we would walk home from school literally with the key around my neck. And I said, my mom, what was the thing with the key around the neck? Like, latchkey kid, couldn't a kid keep it in a backpack? Like, did it have to be so typical? She said, no, everyone put the key around the neck at the time. So anyway, very stereotypical latchkey kid, key around the neck. And I would walk my sisters and I home and open the door. We would clean up until my mom got home, maybe 3 hours later. That just instilled in me the leadership quality, whether or not I wanted it or not. And so, yes, I was very much the typical older sister. I fell into the tropes.
Did you and Gina and Tara all go to St. Joseph's?
I love St. Joseph and went to St. Joseph's, was the homecoming queen, student body president at St. Joseph's, overachiever. Gina went, lasted 1 quarter and was like, I hate this place. I'm not going. That's Gina.
But you know why? Because everybody compared her to you. And that was my experience with my brother.
Really? Oh, you're not the oldest?
He's 11 months older than me. I was always in his shadow. I hated it.
Well, then you two are like Gina and Tara because they are 11 months apart and they're kind of like twins. They're so
Irish twins. Yeah.
They really are. But with me and Gina, by the time she got to that, she lasted. And, some kids would go in and suffer through that whole experience. She's so clear-minded. Within the first quarter, she said, I'm out of here. I'm not going here. And ended up going to another public school, which was a big thing in the family, public school. Because my mother worked so hard where we lived, she felt like the Catholic schools would protect us a little bit more and was really worked hard to make that happen. So when my sister Gina broke from tradition, and it was a family scandal.
What was she afraid of? What was your mother afraid of?
Just our neighborhood, our neighborhood, and just felt like her girls would be watched more diligently by nuns. And she was correct. So it was a strict environment, and that's what she wanted for us, and that's what we did.
What are you thinking about in terms of what you want to be when you grow up and all of that? Because I know I read somewhere that you got a special gift when you were graduating from the 8th grade.
My godmother, Charlene, gave me a briefcase. I apparently wanted it. I apparently had asked for a briefcase for my birthday when I was in the 8th grade. That's challenging for me to wrap my head around, that was what I was asking for. But I have to admit that that's, I guess, who I was, a super nerd. But I asked for a briefcase. And yeah, I always laugh and say I really, really thought it was a few short steps to the courtroom. Like, I had the briefcase. What else do you need? I'm clearly knowledgeable about the law, and I'm going to make this work. Obviously, I was in the 8th grade. I knew nothing. I really thought law was for me at that time. And that lasted, I don't know, maybe a couple more years. I think I was really just interested in helping people and winning.
The fact that this is basically the Los Angeles area, I know a lot of people who grow up in the hood or wherever that's away from Hollywood. Sometimes they never go to that part of town, or they never go to the beach. What was your experience like with Hollywood at the time?
Oh, nothing. It was as a film lover. My Aunt Denise, who was a huge, huge influence in my life, was a woman who worked at night as a nurse. And she would work at night so that during the day she could do what she wanted. She was one of those people who didn't live to work. She worked to live. And she loved plays, and she loved movies and music and concerts and poetry and museums. We would go out in her little red Volkswagen through the city and explore things. She wasn't a big beach nature person. She was big into the arts and culture. And she grew up, born and raised in Compton in South Central, but, loved a good opera and a beautiful, exhibit in a museum, and really opened up the world to me in that way. And so I remember, I think my biggest memory of going into LA from Compton and Linwood was going to the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. It was at that time just this grand theater space. And I remember walking up the steps and thinking, I've never seen anything so beautiful in my whole life. There was no space like that where we were from, where it was just for art. And I remember the velvet seats and the curtains opening and just all the pomp and circumstance of that. Those were my experiences at that time. But yeah, I mean, Los Angeles, and if you're living in Compton, you're living in Compton at that time. For me, my family wasn't also going to LA at all. When I went to UCLA, it was a big, whoa, what's been happening over here? Westwood? I didn't know Los Angeles. It's a sprawl. I think people around the country don't understand what a sprawl LA is. So if you're in Compton or you're, in Orange County, you're not really in LA every day.
You and your aunt would have had a more special bond than any of your siblings because you were the oldest. And I know having nieces and nephews, I'm much closer to the first one that's born. And I know she also exposed you to two things particularly that ended up, I think, rippling throughout your life. One was a movie, one of your favorite movies, and the other one was a music group. You want to talk a little bit about that? Yeah,
the movie was West Side Story. I remember the day, it was a rainy day, and she had to work that night. And I guess I was talking a lot or something, or she just needed to do something with me. I was spending the night spending the evening at her house or something. And I remember her turning the channels and saying, "Oh, great. This is great. And it's long. It's like 3 hours. Sit here, watch this. Really watch it, Ava, and tell me what you think afterward." I was like, okay. I remember it was raining and her refrigerator wasn't working. And so I don't think I ever tell this part of the story, but she would put Coke cans, because she loved Coke or Pepsi, on the windowsill. And when it was cold, it would get cold. So she said, sit there and put this Coke can here. And after the 6th commercial, it'll be cold. So after the 6th commercial, go ahead to the window and get yourself a Coke. And I was like, come on, this is great. This is fantastic. And I don't know if it was a combination of the rain, the Coke I was waiting for to get cold, but I fell in love with this movie and the brown people and Maria and Tony and the dancing and the colors. And it feels like the first movie. I mean, it wasn't even in a theater. It was on the television. I mean, I had seen movies before at the movie theater. I wasn't that young. I don't know. It was something about it. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I've seen it now all over the world. I've seen it on planes, trains, automobiles. I've seen it done live with orchestra music. I've seen black and white, color, film, digital. All of them are beautiful.
And what about the music group?
Oh, U2. You know what? I have to tell you a story that I haven't told anyone about this because it just happened. I don't even know how to put it into words how I feel about it, but I love U2. And it was my Aunt Denise who introduced me to U2. And growing up in Compton, Linwood, Long Beach, U2 is not what people are listening to.
Right.
And I listened to all kinds of music, but the U2 piece of it, she got me into it because she took me to I believe it was my first concert. It was an Amnesty International concert, and there were a bunch of people performing, and U2 was the finale. And I remember going to Amnesty International concert and getting a little booklet, I still have it somewhere, of human rights. It listed out the United Nations kind of agreed upon human rights, Amnesty International Book of Human Rights. And it's a little booklet, and they were giving away for free at the door. And I remember thinking, wow, what is this? First of all, it's free. This is fantastic. Secondly, I don't know these things. Like reading it through and thinking, wow, these are the things that no matter who you are, we should all have in common. And just starting to think about it, it was such a huge moment for me. And then I'm watching all these groups, and my aunt had taught me one U2 song. And the reason why, the way she got me into it is because it was about Martin Luther King Jr., she told me. She's like, listen to the words of this song. It's called Pride in the Name of Love. And they're talking about Martin Luther King. I was like, they are? These white boys are talking about Martin Luther King? And so I listened to the song, fell in love with the song, and went to that concert. And then I was a goner. And I took a deep dive into U2. And this is slightly before they became mega famous, I think it's right before Joshua Tree, which is their landmark album. Cut to, I've seen them over 40 times live. It's ridiculous.
You've met them.
Well, I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
Got to go through all the years when I'm just a pure super fan, knowing everything, loving everything. My first feature film I named I Will Follow, which is a famous U2 song. I couldn't afford, because I made that movie for $50,000, which is the amount of craft services, which is the food table at most movies. I made the whole movie for that amount. I couldn't afford the song I Will Follow, so I had somebody make a song called I Will Follow. Anyway, I remember there was a LA Times review that said, this movie is pretty good, except it has the unrealistic character trait of a Black woman who loved U2. I remember I was so hurt by that, the minimalization of our worldview in the article. So anyway, loved U2, went through the whole thing, finally was able to meet Bono. And, I met a lot of people. Like, I acted a fool. I used to be a publicist. No one phases me. I remember meeting President Obama and feeling the weight of it, but also being able to hold myself together. I mean, I wasn't acting a fool. I met him. That was it. It was done. And my love of him in that group, it was never, how some, little girls or boys, they like a group because they think, oh, it's be my boyfriend or something. Like, I love them, his voice and what he said and represented. So when I met him, it was tied to my aunt who had since passed away. It was tied to my childhood, my growing up. When I'm sad, I listen to U2. When I'm happy, I listen to U2. So him standing in front of me, it was a full circle moment. But wait, there's more. I started to get like an occasional email that would go into my filter folder, into my spam, because it had letters on it. It was weird. And so there were these emails in my filter folder. One day I go in and there's like 6. And I'm like, who is this? And I'm reading it, and it has his real name, initials, not Bono. And it's Bono. He's been emailing me, and months have gone by. All the blood drains out of my face. Your hero, your artistic hero, your emotional rock of music has been emailing you, and you have not responded. Anyway, I fixed that. I explained. Now and then we have an exchange. And this is the final part of the story, because Light is like, this answer's long. This is it. Last week, like this Tuesday, I talked to him on the phone because he had sent me an email asking if he could interview me for U2 Radio on Sirius Radio. And that he has an occasional series where he'll interview people that he's interested in. I said, what is going on? Mind blown. I'm sitting on a Skype, like this, on a Zoom, talking to Bono. And he's asking me questions about my life, my work. Literally, brother. It happened like 6 days ago. And so I say this to say the cycles, I'm starting to, at this age and in quarantine, really pay attention to the cyclical nature of life and how things that I'm experiencing now will land in a certain place that is beyond my control, but can be within my observation. And that now things that were seeded in years ago on multiple levels seem to be coming back around. Lessons, things I've said, things I've experienced, things I've observed. That was just a huge one. Like, who gets to meet their heroes? And if you do, you're lucky if they're who you thought they were. That's turned out to be the case here, and I feel so fortunate.
I love that story. I want to fill in the gaps for people who don't know about that film, I Will Follow, and just all the other things that have happened in between now and then. So a couple questions for you. Was there a griot in your family? And if so, who was that person?
I think it would be Denise.
Mm-hmm.
It would be Denise. And so I think that's why the connection with you two and Bono and Denise in the first film, which is about her, is all tied up in a very emotional place for me.
And how did you inherit your work ethic? You mentioned you were class president and homecoming queen. I'm assuming you did well in school.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Well, definitely not wanting to disappoint my mother as a baseline of fear. And I say this, and if you meet my mother, her voice is like this. She has a voice like a little girl. When I was growing up, bill collectors would call the house, and you see how my voice is. My voice has always been like this. She would answer the phone and say, hello. And they would say, can I speak to your mother? And she said, I am the mother. This happened so many times that she would hand me the phone and she would tell me what to say, and I'd say it in this voice. My relationship with my mother, we're 18 years apart. Me having to stand in proxy for her as an adult on the phone often because of her high-pitched voice, and her being a single mom and taking care of my sisters, all that contributed to kind of a responsibility. I think the work ethic really came in with my father, Murray May, who, like I said, she met and married when I was 8, 9, something like that. Was just a hardworking man. He would wake up every day, put on his work boots, put on his work clothes, and go out and make a way for himself in the world with his truck and his tools. And he had a carpet and flooring business. He had, let morals guide him in terms of his work. He would talk about things that people would do and what he said back to them. Things that I even try now, because to think about what my father would do in tough situations when people don't treat me well, he would always turn the other cheek. I get emotional talking about him. I miss him. But yeah, definitely the work ethic from him, the sense of responsibility from my mother.
I grew up in Montgomery, as we talked about before. And obviously, that's the cradle of the Confederacy and the genesis of this modern day civil rights movement. So that conversation was constant in my family. And I've read that your family was more of a Black Panther, sort of Black Power lean. I'm wondering how prevalent was that conversation as you were growing up?
That wasn't in my family. That was in my neighborhood. My family is very apolitical. It's interesting. And I wish we had time to talk at a different, because I have questions to ask you. But if you're in Montgomery, and you know the history of Montgomery, that is a place of radical Black politics. And when I say radical, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're talking about Black Panthers. Nonviolent protest was radical. It's all birthed there in so many ways, or not birthed, but demonstrated there in a national way there. And so, but my father at the time of a lot of the activity in Montgomery was a kid. He was a little boy. And he came from Lowndes County, Alabama, where there were a lot of people who were very political and very grassrooted in their organizing, but there were a lot of people who were afraid. And he came from a family who was more afraid of that kind of involvement in the movement, and was, rightly so. And had seen murder and had seen bloodshed within the family, and so didn't really traffic in that too much. And so, and my mother, growing up in Compton, they were both in the middle of movements that they never really were involved in. Like, she was right in the middle of the Black Power movement in Compton and South Central, and never was really a part of it, just tangentially. I said, did you guys march? And they're like, yeah, no, we just were, observing from the side. And so it's interesting, but where I grew up, Black Panthers and Black Liberation movement were epicenter for it. And so I heard a lot about it outside of my home. But so it's interesting to me that there's a family like yours that actually was talking about that in the house as you're growing up. That wasn't my experience.
Wow. Yeah.
That's interesting because when I think of you, I think on the surface, I think these kinds of shows are nice. I don't know you at all, but from what I know from the gram, someone might look at me and think, oh, she probably came from a highly political family where they were organizing and marching. And I didn't. And you did. But you know what I mean? Like taking different routes. So I saw a picture of you online with Rosa Parks.
Yeah. My family, they were friends with her.
Wow.
They were there during all that time. And her and my grandmother were very close friends. And, it's one of those things where I didn't have an appreciation for it as much as I do now. Obviously, if I had a chance to go back and, with my awareness now, and I would be asking her nonstop questions and wanting to hear everything. But I remember taking that picture at the time and just thinking, who's this old lady? And, if you've heard about her, I grew up on Rosa Parks Avenue.
But you never at that time, you're just a kid. You're not thinking about that.
No, I wasn't really thinking about it. Again, I had surface level knowledge, but like we talked about, there are high schools in Montgomery named after Confederate generals and the Confederate president. And to this day, that's Montgomery, Alabama. And what's interesting, I'm sure from your perspective, and we'll get to, shooting in Montgomery, but you don't have to really do much because it looks almost exactly like it looked in the 1950s.
Totally.
So there's no production design that you need to do.
There wasn't a lot. We just had to put the people in the right clothes and have them
right.
I like if you're going down this one highway in Montgomery and it's like Confederate White House 1 mile ahead. You're like, really? That's what the sign is, and you go and it's there waiting for you.
Right. How would you describe your childhood? Would you describe it as a happy childhood, or was it a struggle, or?
No, very happy. I think of it as happy. And what a fortunate thing that is, as you grow up, what people have gone through. And, I've never really done the work of going back and looking at my childhood from an adult lens. And I think why? Right now in my mind, it was happy. So for me to apply my current politics or my current worldview to that, I'd rather just remember it as a happy time and leave it there because it's very positive. I grew up on a street that I thought was beautiful. I went back maybe about 10 years ago, was in the area and drove through it. And I was like, wow, that's how it always is. Wow, it's small.
It's so small.
That house was so small. And wow, was that across the street? And I remember this being different. And, but in my childhood mind, I remember the tree and I remember the lawn and I remember the good. So yeah, I was very happy.
Why did you choose UCLA? I would imagine you'd be going to somewhere like Spelman or
I didn't get in.
Howard. You didn't get in?
I did not get into Spelman College.
Wow. Their loss.
That was my number one school, and I didn't get accepted. But I did get accepted to UCLA, and so that's where I went. I really thought I was going to Spelman. Like, that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to be a Spelman sister. I wanted to do the whole thing. Didn't work out for me, but it was good. I loved UCLA and I learned so much there, and I really became a part of the Black student community there, writing for the Black student newspaper, Black Student Union. And that's where really, I think my, political worldview began in a way that has informed so much of my work and what I believe now. So it all worked out.
The one thing I want to touch on first is you had to show up at UCLA a month early as a freshman. Did you understand at the time why that was happening and what that meant?
They had a thing called the Freshman Summer Program, FSP, where it might have been a month and a half. They brought Black kids early in Brown up early to get oriented. I believe it was something that came out of previous Black students saying that kids who have no context for what this is going to be like, the university should spend some time helping them be prepared. It was like a summer camp before college with a whole bunch of Black kids. Lifelong friendships, but also a preparation so that when everyone else came, we didn't feel like we were not on equal footing. And not so much intellectually, but just in terms of resources and structure of a school like that. The assumption was most Black kids from certain areas were coming from schools that did not have that kind of formality and needed a little help. So I don't even remember ever talking about this anywhere.
And at the time, had you already started going down to the Good Life Cafe?
No. That was later in my freshman year.
So you're in college now. You're studying African American studies and English. That's your sort of double major. You have a job at Aunt Kizzy's back porch.
I'm leaving this podcast. What are you talking about?
So you're having to drive down to Marina Del Rey to do that. You're driving over to Exposition in Crenshaw to rap on stage. And your group figures of speech with your hit song, Don't Get It Twisted.
Oh my God. This is crazy. Wow. I'm like blown away.
And then UCLA is in Brentwood, basically, right? Or Bel Air, actually. So
yeah,
it's a lot of driving. Plus you double major.
That's a double major. That is so great. And thank you for the research. What a wonderful person to know all that and to find all that. One thing that I'll say about that time with all the driving, which no one's made that connection. My mother just on Wednesday of this week said, because she wanted a screen door. She's been talking about the screen door. She wants a screen door so she could have the doors open. I said, Mom, use the credit card, get the screen door. I don't know. I said, how much is it? She said, it's a lot, but I've saved a little. I said, how much is it? It's a screen door. How much can it be? Well, it needs to be custom. And I said, okay, Mom, how much is it? It's almost $1,000. Very worried about it. I said, Mom, it's okay. Consider it a gift, an early Christmas gift. Get the screen door on the credit card. She gets the screen door, and she's really beat up about it. I said, Mom, let this be payback for all the parking tickets. And she laughed and laughed. That goes back to your question. All that driving, I'm telling you, I had a warrant for my arrest on parking tickets. Westwood, everything's metered, okay?
That's right.
I couldn't afford a parking pass, right? A student parking pass. So I had to park far and walk. So when I'm coming home from Aunt Kizzy's, I didn't want to walk. So I would just I'll get out before they come in. I'll get out at 7 a.m. and I'll move the car. 57 parking tickets. That turned into a warrant. That turned into me not being allowed to go to school until I paid parking tickets on campus. The city had parking tickets off campus. I had parking tickets in Marina Del Rey. I had parking tickets on Crenshaw. And my mother somehow, with working a small job, paid those tickets. And so I said to her just 3 days ago, the screen door or the parking tickets? She said, no. How about my house for the parking tickets? I said, the house also for the parking tickets. Everything you've ever done that I'm doing for you now is because of those parking tickets. Because if you didn't, those could have took me down. When you really look at it, that could have taken me out of school, taken me down. And so she saved me. Anyway, I did a lot of driving.
You did. And you did a lot of performing.
I did. That was the first time I was an artist. I was not even trying to be. I just loved that vibe. I made my very first documentaries about it. Mm-hmm. And it's called This Is the Life. And I was just going down as a kid listening to music.
I watched you perform. And when I saw you performing, what I saw was hours and hours of rehearsing and memorizing and practicing your stage presence. Is that just my imagination, or were you really, I mean, that's a part-time job right there.
It was so fun. It was a joy. It didn't feel like a job. It was a joy. That was our scene. Those were our people.
Yeah, like a purpose. Like we
were all trying to impress each other. Yeah, we were trying to impress each other. There was a rigor applied to it to get up on that stage. You couldn't get up messy. You respected everyone who was getting up, and so you wanted to do your best. No cursing allowed. There was so many things that weren't allowed. And so you had to work within the limits and be creative. It was probably the best. I mean, I've had some beautiful creative experiences, but I would say it was the best creative community I've ever been a part of.
What did you learn about entertaining people from that experience?
You know, the interesting thing is I never felt like that work was about entertaining people. I felt like it was about saying something. So that's interesting now that you helped me make the connection. Because even in my work now, I don't think about keeping people entertained as much as I think about what am I saying here? That was what The Good Life was about, is meaning. And everyone gathered, cared about the meaning, and so therefore were entertained. But it didn't start from an entertaining place. It started from a place of, is this worth saying, and how are you saying it?
And it was also sort of a genesis of conscious hip hop or rap. So did you ever see like Diggable Planets or Arrested Development or any of those guys there?
We love them.
Farside
were regulars, and I'm impressed by your hip hop knowledge. Very good. Farside were regulars.
I wasn't always a meditation teacher.
No, you're not a meditation teacher. Everywhere you see online about you, it says meditation guru. I thought, did
teachers
he
are more
say
humble.
I'm a meditation guru? And everyone, but like, that's the word around meditation, guru. What does it take to go from teacher to guru? If I would have this podcast, I'd be asking this question. But yeah, no, it was a beautiful time. And yeah, met a lot of great artists there.
Going back to college, you're studying African American studies. Did you have a mentor in that area, or to someone to kind of give you an idea of what the future could be like?
I mean, there were a lot of wonderful professors. I think the biggest piece of it was just the other students. There was a woman named Monique Matthews, who was a few years above me, who really helped me so much at that time as a young, Black woman on campus and learning about myself. There was a gentleman who ran a lot of the Black student life on campus, Mandela Kaise, who really, took me under his wing and helped me with reading and what to read and what to be listening to and thinking about during that time. So it was really the student life was the most impactful for me at that time. UCLA has such a rich Black student history. I mean, from Angela Davis's professorship there to, how the African Student Union was formed to, even two Black Panthers being shot and killed on campus. It was a lot to learn and to embrace, and it was a beautiful place.
Did you have an idea of where you were going to work after college?
I thought I was going to be a publicist. Well, first I thought I was going to be a journalist. And I got a very prestigious internship with the CBS Evening News, and I was a part of the OJ unit. And I'd been working all that time to produce broadcast news. And so I got to CBS Evening News national desk in LA with Connie Chung and Dan Rather, and I thought, few short steps to my career. And I hated being on the OJ unit. I was digging through people's trash cans. I'm a juror. I was doing things. This is when I feel news started to become a lot more tabloid in nature. And I was right there for that. And so I'm grateful for it because I was able to move out of it before I put too much time into it. And then I got into publicity because I love movies. And I thought, I can write. I love movies. I'm interested in media. So instead of being the press, why don't I pitch the press? So I got into publicity.
Did you have friends in publicity at the time?
No, I don't even know how I fell into it. I had no friends in publicity at the time. I truly believe that so much of what people become in life from college is based on what the open positions are at the Career Center. I'm telling you. I mean, it's like, I could do that. I think I can do that. And you fall into a job and it's 20 years later and that's what you are. But thankfully, I was able to get into publicity in the movie industry, which I loved from Denise teaching me about movies. And so I thought I had the best job in the world.
Once you started working in publicity, I know you spent some years working for 20th Century Fox, and then you opened up your own agency. What did you become known for in the industry? Like if your name came up in a conversation, what would be the associated reputation?
Yeah, Black or young. I was 27 when I started my agency. So I got anything that was for kids and young people, 27, but I was the youngest doing it. And so they're like, she's closest to knowing what the heck you can do with kids and Black films.
What about more on a personal level? Were you easy to work with? Did you have a reputation for being like thorough or hard worker?
I think so. Thorough, hard worker. I was just saying to someone on my array team the other day, we have to be actually someone I was interviewing. This is a non-Black woman who I was interviewing for a job at Array, which is my current company. And I said, as a Black woman-led company, our work has to be more excellent than everyone else, not because we want it to be or we dislike it that way, but we don't get second chances like our white male counterparts. So that's the way that we work. Everything's buttoned down. Every email is spell checked. Everything is better than everyone else is the way that we try to work. And so I recognized that I had to do that from an early age. When I opened my agency at 27 as a Black woman, just to be even taken seriously, my stuff had to be better than everyone else. So that's how we work. I think it's unfortunate. I think we should have the opportunity to be sloppy and half-assed like everybody else.
Chris Rock has an interesting, you've probably seen his interview or bit about this. He was saying that Major League Baseball didn't become less racist until Black players didn't have to be perfect anymore. They could have mediocre players and it was okay, right? And before that, though, everyone had to be like the pinnacle of excellence.
Yeah. That's good. Very true.
Yeah.
So, I was a victim of that, but embraced it. And I see, though, that is what that's cost me in terms of, the extra time, the extra stress, the extra diligence, when that time could have been used for life and other things. And so I think in some ways, a lot of good came from it, but it's unfortunate that we feel like we have to do that and perform in that way.
What were your sources of balance at the time? Had you taken up meditation? Had you, done yoga? What were you doing to release the stress?
I was just working. It hasn't changed much, to be honest. I mean, I am more thoughtful about it and I create a bit more room than I did before. But I was talking to a friend who's known me for a while and says, you're getting better. You're getting better than you used to be. And I think I'm on a journey towards just living life differently, but I'm not there and I didn't do it for a long time. People always ask me, that's always a big question at the end of like quick interviews. How do you create balance? Like for the women's magazines, Glamour, Harper's Bazaar, tell me about balance. Sometimes I'll be honest and I'll say, I don't have any. Sometimes I'll say, oh, I hike and I do whatever. But really the truth is I've not lived a balanced life. I've embraced my work because I've loved it so much. And I felt like this makes me happier than anything else. So why do I have that balance? It's not balanced if I'd rather be at work than be at home, right? What I wasn't doing is trying to understand why didn't I want to be at home, right? Why didn't I want to be with myself? Why was it better to be in control and in charge on a set and not be home? And so those are the things that I've been working out over the past few years.
And there was a life event that happened around 2003 that kind of slowed you down a little bit with your aunt.
Denise, yeah. Denise was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And nothing changes your view on life than being in the room with someone when they're told there's nothing else we can do. And so really went about trying to make her as happy and comfortable as I could in that final, it was supposed to be 4 months. It turned out to be a year and a half.
You all moved to the beach or something like that?
Yeah,
together?
we moved to the beach. She always wanted to live. She had lived in Buena Park at that time, which is no disparaging of Buena Park, but it's not by the beach. Sounds nice. Sounds great. Buena Park, California, but it's inland. It's not the beach. And I was a publicist at that time and didn't have a whole bunch of money, but I took what I could and I rented this house that I couldn't afford by the beach on the street. I don't know. I don't know if men are into this. I know that's a gender stereotype, but some ladies like to drive around and look at houses and neighborhoods and be like, oh,
sure.
Yeah. And so there was a street that she loved in Long Beach that we would just, throughout my life, we would drive around and we just loved this area. And so I got her a house in this area. We rented it and it was near the beach. And so those last months were there. I look back now and I see all the things I did wrong. It was less about where she was, even though it was really nice, and more about the conversations that I should have been having with her to help her prepare. I didn't know. I wasn't equipped to have those conversations. I just thought, let me do what I can. And it was really all material. Let me make sure she has the best food, the best apartment, the best view, because I was lacking in the other areas. But, you do the best you can at the time. And so, that was a few years of focusing on her and then trying to put life back together after she moved on.
Well, it was also during that time that you found yourself on that Michael Mann set on that fateful day where you had a vision for yourself. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was before. She was still alive when I was writing Middle of Nowhere, which ended up being my second film. It had a completely different story. It's funny. But I remember it was towards the end, and I remember I was starting to write the script and she was excited about the script being written, but by the time it was finished, she was really, really sick and couldn't really engage with it. But yeah, I was I was a publicist and I was working on a set of a movie called Collateral, which I really love that movie. And he was shooting in East LA, which wasn't far from areas that I knew and would be around growing up and so forth. And it was a Tom Cruise movie with Jada Pinkett, Jamie Foxx, and Javier Bardem and Mark Ruffalo. So there's a lot of black and brown people before that movie. And I remember him shooting with these new cameras. I was like, God, what is this camera? It's a digital camera. And I was like, God, this is so fast. Wow, this picture's so clear. What's going on? And he's one of the first people to be shooting with these specific cameras. And he had all these black and brown people on the set. And it was in East LA. And I thought, I'd never seen a movie set in a place like that with so many black people using the top cameras with a big movie star. And I thought, gosh, I don't even know what I thought, but I somehow thought, let me try to write a script. Let me try it. And so I did. And so that was the first time that I can recall being interested in being the storyteller.
Did you get the Sid Field book, the classic screenwriting?
It's right on my I read every book to try to figure out how to screenwrite. Yeah. None of them worked.
You based that character, the main character, off, she was a registered nurse.
Yeah, she was a nurse.
Was that after your aunt's position as a nurse?
Yeah.
You also mentioned Maxwell Air Force Base in that movie, which I thought was really cool. They were from the quote unquote, the Gump. I caught that.
You watched the movie.
Of course.
Then you saw the Montgomery references.
I loved it. Yeah.
Only someone who knows who's from the Gump will recognize the Gump. Yeah.
Of course. Around Christmas holidays 2005, you decided to make a film.
Did I? I'm like, what happened? What did I do?
For $6,000, you decided to make a film.
That was This Is the Life? What is it?
That was Saturday Night Life after your mom's, the mom's trip to the 99 cents.
Wow. Okay, so
that was your first film.
Okay, listen to me, sir. Those listening to this podcast need to hear me and say, this might be one of the most thorough interviews. See, I'm skipping. I'm doing my normal. This is my first film.
Right. No, that's not your first film. This is your first film.
No. Yes.
Because I want people to understand you didn't just start off making these big films. Like you, and everyone that I've interviewed, they start off little baby steps. I'm going to try this. I'm just going to invest a little bit of my time here and there, and they're working really hard, and they're doing it while they're busy. Yeah,
that's important to share with people. So thank you. Yeah, I was a publicist. I decided on my Christmas vacation I was going to try to make a film. There was a story that my mom always told that I remember being a part of, that when we were little and she was depressed, the three girls, that she would grease us up with Vaseline all over, make our hair pretty, put us in pretty dresses, have us all matching, and take us to the store. And she did that at a time when she was very depressed, because she knew when she walked around with her three beautiful, greased up hair, slicked down girls, that people would say, oh my gosh, your girls are so pretty. Oh my gosh, you're doing such a good job with those girls. And it was a boost for her at a time when she really needed it. So I made a short about that. And that kind of got me hooked. I took it to a film. I remember getting into my first film festival, the Palm Springs Short Film Festival. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm in a real film festival. I was a publicist. I had done Sundance and Toronto, like the biggest festivals in the world. But getting into that little film festival with my own film that I wrote and tried to figure out how to direct was literally, I don't know when I've been as happy. And I remember taking off early on a Friday, driving down by myself to Palm Springs to show my short at the Palm Springs Film Festival. And, it's those little moments. People want to talk about I want to direct, or I want to act, or I want to do whatever. And they want to be what they see, right? But the best moments are the moments when you're packing your car to drive to the Palm Springs Film Festival by yourself to show your first film. If you don't have those moments, then it doesn't feel as great when you get to the place that you see. You've got to embrace the steps. That's why I value the conversation, because you're reminding me of my steps. But you've got to embrace those steps and go through them and revel in them as you're going through them. Hear my voice in telling you that is the good stuff. When no one's looking, when no one cares that you're driving to the film festival, because those are the moments when you can truly be free. When you're on the mic at The Good Life and it's just a bunch of kids rapping and nobody cares, right? Except you. All that stuff is getting you to the place that you need to be or will be. And so emotional thinking about it. But yeah, those were good times.
You did a series of other shorts, documentaries. I guess you were learning the craft and investing a lot of your own money over those years. And you were also still working, still had your PR company up until 2011. You decided, I'm going to close my company. And there was an interesting inspiration for making that decision based on your mom. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, my mom changed careers, and so I thought I could too. I'd made several films, but I still ran my PR firm. And when I won Sundance in 2012 or 11, I thought, this is my opportunity. I'm either going to make films full time or I'm going to keep doing this hybrid thing, and I'm never going to quite be able to get to a place with the film. So my mother had set the precedent because later in her life, she had switched careers from working as a hospital administrator to a preschool teacher. And she always had wanted to be a preschool teacher. And so I saw how happy that made her to make that change. And she was in her 30s when she did it. So I thought, okay, there's some precedent in my own life for seeing that you can make a radical change from one thing to another as an older person.
And you moved houses. You moved from Sherman Oaks to Beechwood Canyon?
Yep. I moved from Sherman Oaks to Beechwood Canyon, trying to live that artist vibe, Just started to but to downsize, because I was going to be a filmmaker now, not a PR firm owner, and just had to live with less to try to pursue the dream.
You had a whole thing going. You had a very successful company. How difficult was it to make that choice, to leave that behind for this kind of vast landscape of unknown possibility and potential in filmmaking?
It was very easy as I look back because I had taken the steps and prepared myself. I didn't do it in one full swoop. Like, I'm going to be a filmmaker, give my things away and let me live small. I had taken all the steps. I had made the other films. I had worked hard at
You'd
my
won some
job,
awards.
a job. And yeah, I gotten to a place where I thought I can take a chance at this. And I'm not a really things person. It was okay for me to be smaller. And people always say about my cars, like, Ava, why don't you take your car you have a nice car. Why don't you take it to the car wash? They're like, oh, yeah. You know what I mean? Because I don't take pride in it. You know what I mean? Or it's like, don't you want some new clothes? If you ask them, they'll send it to you for free. And I'm like, oh, yeah, they can. I just don't think of those things. So the downsize was not hard. And then just to be a full-time filmmaker, that was the scary part, the creative endeavor of, can I support my family? Can I support myself? Is this going to work? Are people going to laugh? It was those things I had to get over more than the material things.
You had a really unique and you could even say unfair advantage over other filmmakers. Not only were you an excellent filmmaker, right, in my own personal opinion, having watched several of your films, but you understood what happens after someone completes their film. In doing so, you were able to create a distribution collective, which was a game changer for you as an independent filmmaker, right? And you were able to position the film, even small budget films, to optimize their box office potential. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I didn't believe anyone would distribute my work at that time. There's no Netflix. There's no none of that. It was just the big studios, and they weren't making small films about Black women's hearts. I decided to try to figure out how to distribute it myself, and was able to, with a group of people, come up with a model that we called Firm. That's now Array. And we've continued to just distribute small films like the ones that I was making early on in a very grassroots, community-oriented way. We're 30 films in. I remember doing the first one thinking, will this work? And now it's 30 plus films and filmmakers that have gone on and make bigger films. And so, yeah, it was just about embracing independence and working outside of the existing systems. And not because you wanted to, just like I was saying before, wish I could be messy. Wish I could just give my film to a studio and it gets distributed. But knowing that those structures were not really viable or available to me, you have to come up with another way. So that's what we do.
And you're also making and selling your own DVDs because you didn't want to license anything. You wanted to maintain ownership of everything. And that was a different approach as well.
Yeah, that was a different model at that time. It's been harder and harder to stay independent in that way as you're making bigger things. And, you know, whenever I make a movie, I'm responsible for millions and millions of dollars. So it becomes more difficult than my earlier work, all of which I own. When you make something for Netflix, you don't own it. And so having to come to terms with, you know, your work and who owns it. I was talking to some friends who are fine artists. It's like, how does it feel to have your stuff hanging in someone's house? You know what I mean? Like, you worked hard, like this beautiful painting behind you. Someone made that. It's theirs, but it's not because it's behind you in your house. How does that feel? And the fine artist said back to me, well, how does it feel to make something and then it's in homes and on phones and on planes, and is it still yours? And really got me thinking about, you know, the only thing that's mine is the making. And after that, it leaves you and it becomes something else.
So you had done a bunch of films. The budgets had increased marginally, 50,000, 200,000. And there's this whole other subplot with David Oyelowo where he sits next to an investor for middle of nowhere. And the investor recognizes him because he's happened to be watching his DVD. And can you talk a little bit about that story leading up to Selma?
Leading up to Selma, crazy story. David had been in my film Middle of Nowhere, which was the one that kind of broke me out and won Sundance. After that, I had no job offers. Famous story of other white male filmmakers who had won different things at Sundance that year, who got immediate job offers. One, a pal named Colin Trevorrow, actually got offered Jurassic Park, and I couldn't even get an episode of television. Ultimately, I got an episode of Scandal and was able to do a little short for Prada. And somewhere along the way, David tells me to go after Selma and that I could really get this job if I could figure out how to do it for the amount of money that they had. Because all the directors were saying, we can't make that for $20 million. I was like, how many million dollars? My last film was $200,000. So I said, literally, all the big filmmakers were like, we can't make a film about Dr. King for $20 million. It's not possible. David was like, she can, because we had just worked together. $20 million to me, I thought, who cannot make this film for $20 million? $20 million? It goes fast. It goes fast. But I wrote the script. We made for $20 million. And yeah, we did this thing. It changed.
And he starred in it. But I think
But before that, the story that you're talking about is on the plane for Middle of Nowhere, which was a $200,000 film. He was on a plane with someone, I didn't even know David, who asked him, I've been asked to invest in this $200,000 film. You're a Black actor because I recognize you from this other show. You're sitting next to me in first class. Do you think I should invest in this? And he said, well, what is it? So it's this Black woman filmmaker, this woman named Ava Duvernay. He's like, oh my gosh, I just saw her on CNN talking about her new model for distributing films. Let me read the script. David reads the script, calls me, says, not only have I told this guy to invest in it, can I be in your movie? And that chance meeting on a plane in first class with this guy that he had, I did not know David, turned out for him being in my movie, him introducing me to the Selma people, and that chance encounter, is it chance? Don't know.
Is it chance? That's the question.
No, is the answer. Changed everything.
And you were the perfect person, even though you were eighth in line or something crazy like that. As a director, you were the perfect person because you had enough naivete to think you could do it for $20 million. Everyone else with sense said, there's no way we could do that. Period piece. you know. And you had a track record of having to do films in 15 days and 5 days. And this film had to be done in 32 days to be released by Christmas. And you were familiar with the area. I mean, it's like it couldn't have been more perfect. It was inevitable. But there was a snag. There was a small little snag.
What? What, Light? What was the snag?
That damn script.
Oh.
You weren't going to get credit. And that's a big deal as someone who's operating at that level. And you had to come to terms with that.
Yeah, that's hard. That was really, really hard. That might be my biggest professional disappointment. Many people don't know about that. So I don't know what you've been reading, but you're really good at research. But yeah, I don't talk about that a lot, but it really hurt me that someone would take credit for something that they didn't do, especially because I put so much of my heart into that script and so much of my family into that script because it's from where my father is from. And my knowledge of Selma, my love of African American history, my trying to make King a real person, you know, who smoked and was chubby and who acted a certain way when his friends talked about death and who didn't want to disappoint his friends, all things I knew about him that weren't in the script. I put all my blackness in that script.
And you brought women into the script.
I brought women into the script. And both of those things are very important pieces of me, my identity, my family, my history. And so for that to be stolen, where when that film at the end of it, I always turn it off. I don't watch it a lot, but now and then, I'm at a screening or something, I walk out right after my name. And that's really sacrilegious because I always stay and watch all my crew's names because we made it together. But right after my name is the man who stole the credit on the script's name. And I just, to this day, I'm not over it. Not over it. I don't know when I'm going to get over it. But it hurts me. It hurts my feelings. So that was what happened there.
You talked about desperation. And there's two ways to go with desperation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think desperation is, I call it like a smelly coat. It repels people. People don't want you to be desperate. They want you to be passionate. And there's a thin line between the two. Passion is propulsive. It's magnetic. It draws people to you. It's positive energy. It's an intention, but it's surrounded by positivity, right? Desperation is the same intention. You want the thing, but it is drawing a negative energy. Even if I go even further, it's actually not the same intention because I think desperation is more self-focused and passion is, more about the place where you're trying to go. Regardless, for ourselves, we have to discern whether or not we're in a place of desperation or passion. And I remember when I was trying to be a filmmaker, I wanted it so badly that I found myself being so desperate that people didn't want to be around me. They didn't want to engage with me. I know we've all come around people come around you and it's just the need that's coming off of them is pulling at you that you don't even want to be around it. That doesn't attract people to want to help you. When you're passionate, where it's not a need, it's a want, it's a desire, it's wow, this person is going to get there, let me help. Or let me at least encourage them or pray for them or whatever. That's what you want to try to open up for yourself. And that is not just in career, that is in relationships. I've seen that again and again with, I have a good friend who just wants to be married and have a baby so bad. I mean, she wants it for herself so badly. She's becoming a certain age. This is her dream. It's not happening. And she's just too desperate. She's out there and people can feel it. It's like, it's too much. And there's a negativity around it, as opposed to just opening up and living life and accepting what comes. And so I just think in general, we just have to watch this because I think our culture leans towards promoting a sense of desperation. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Promoting a sense of you need these things to get to where you want to go, as opposed to stopping and saying, what do I have? How can I be happy right where I am? Doesn't mean you can't have a dream. But how can I be happy right where I am? How can I revel in the steps, right? Enjoy the steps. How can I take my time to get there and just have a more passionate relationship with yourself as you're going through it towards the dream?
I feel like it's magnified in places like Los Angeles too. So I'm so happy that you said what you said about the best part of your whole journey, or one of the best parts, was driving out to Palm Springs by yourself with your film to submit it to this festival.
Wait, I can't let you knock LA.
I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying I think it's magnified. There are a lot of beautiful things about LA, but just in terms of desperation, in my experience, there's like a silent sort of judgment around what can you do for me in that scene, that industry scene in Los Angeles. And I think people have to kind of almost actively protect themselves from that, and that's why you have all these mansions far, far away from every place, because people want to control their environment, who comes in, and make sure that people that they're surrounded with aren't like that. Or maybe sometimes they want people like that. I don't know, but
I think you're right about that. I think also it's, one of the things that, I know we're wrapping up, but one of the things about LA, just to say, I don't know if it's LA. I think it's the culture of the industry,
entertainment,
and lifestyle and all that. I've had to really come to a place where whenever I'm interacting with it happened early on in my career where I would be disappointed that I think I'm interacting with someone from a real human place, but they really just want something.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And when that happens to you enough, and I think that's happened to so many people, when that happens to you enough, then you start to not give yourself to, you meet someone new and it's the exchange is, oh, they're going to want something, as opposed to, let me just talk to you. And so I think that, especially when what I did as a publicist, what I do now as a director, like I have very few conversations in the industry where someone is not talking to me because they want something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how do you bifurcate that from real life when the industry is your real life? And so it's interesting being in a place where people want something from you instead of you wanting something from them. And when that change happens, there's some adjustment there.
Now that you're on the other side, what's the takeaway from that? Say someone meets someone who they would naturally want something from. What's the move?
What do you have to offer? That's what I say. I need your help. Can I get advice? Can I have a coffee so you can tell me this? I would love to talk to you for a few minutes. Every time I read that, that's a line that I hate. That's a pet peeve. I would love to take you to coffee.
What's in it for me? Right.
I would not love for you to take me to coffee. A, I don't know you. B, I'm busy.
Right.
C, what is the conversation going to be? D, who are you? Like, part of the people that I like to work with is I observe them working and doing their thing, and I want to get in there and know more about it, right? Like, I'm interested. Like, be on your own train. Do your own thing. That attracts people to you, and then people want to collaborate, and then they do want to do for you because you're doing something for yourself, or you can give them something, not material, but a good conversation, an anecdote, a story, some energy, some life, a laugh, some poignancy, some exchange. But when you're just trying to draw from people, people back up, and just think about that in your own life, not from your career or whatever, but folks listening, just think about your best experiences are sitting at a table with a friend, having a conversation over a meal. That's an exchange. You're giving something, they're giving something, it feels good, you walk away full. If you're not able to do that, even as a person who's trying to get somewhere, every time you go into a job interview, you don't try to get the job, try to give yourself to the job. What are you giving? And our society, our culture is so get, that it's like, what do you have to bring to yourself? It doesn't have to be, what do you have to give of yourself to whatever the experience you're inside of? Or else you're not inside of it. You're outside of it just trying to claw your way in. I think that's the biggest thing. I say that a lot with job interviews, where I say to people, I didn't realize until I started hiring, when I wake up in the morning and I'm doing interviews to hire, how much I want that person to be the right person. I want them to come in and tell me what they can do to help me, because this is a job this is a job to help me. But people go into the job like, help me get this job, when they should walk in like, Ava, this is what I can do to help you by filling this job, right? No, they'll go in and be like, well, I can, and they're groveling and they're unsure of themselves and they're scared. It's like, well, you're not going to help me do the job. I need,
right.
You don't have this job. And it's just a posture and a perspective and a point of view. So I hope if anyone hears any of this, from this story of all these arcane facts that Light has pulled out from my life.
I've had more. We just don't have time to get into all of them.
All of those led to this moment of me to say, don't be desperate. Focus on the experience that you're having and you want people to have with you. Mm-hmm. And try to move through these spaces with that and see what happens.
Final question for you. How are you defining success these days?
That's a great question. As we're in the middle of a pandemic, revolution, recession, mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you the truth.
But every day I turn on the news, I'm looking at it. You've gotten awarded with something. You're offered
Those
something.
Aren't success. Those aren't success. You know what
So that's why I want to know, because people would look at that and think, oh, she sees herself as a success. So how do you define success for yourself?
I do see myself as a success, but I'll tell you why. For the first time in 20 years, I've been home for longer than a month. There are places in my house that I am seeing hit, like what that corner looks like at noon when the sun hits the plant. And the other day I was in the house, I was like, look at that coming through the window. Let me sit there. Let me sit in that part of the yard. I have not cooked for myself like I've been cooking for myself over the past, but cook for myself, enjoying the slicing of the arugula. You know what I mean? Just taking care of myself in a way that's not rushing from place to place. This quarantine time has been challenging. I've had a death in my family early on. I've had real challenges, but I've also had beauty and joy of spending time alone. And I feel so successful in finally giving myself some time. That's how I know you, because I don't meditate until 2 months ago when I picked up that damn book. And someone told me about it a long time ago. I was like, I ain't got no time to meditate. My mind can't stay still. The first pages of your book, everything that came out of my mouth, you've heard it a million times. And the thing that made me literally, I dropped the book and I shed a couple tears at a point early in the book when you write, and the reason why is because I just said this to my sister Tara the week before from my own revelation, right? I feel like I'd never heard it before. I thought it. I said, this is going to be my new way. I said it to my sister. She's like, wow, we should do that. And a week later, you said the same thing in the book. You know what it was? Can't guess?
No idea. Now the role is reversed. I have no idea what you're going to say.
You have that many jewels that you're dropping in your book? You said to not think about the fact that you have to do something, but the fact that you get to do something.
Oh.
And as an overextended person who over and over always hears, I have to do this, I have to go do this, I have that meeting, I have that, I'm on this deadline, I got to go get this, I got to go get that, I have to tell mom, I have to communicate this on the set where it's 13 departments and I have to serve all of them. For me to say, no, you don't have to, you get to. You are the one who gets to do these things. And that was such a big game changer for me when I thought it out of my own mind. And then you write it down in real black and white on a real book that I'm holding in my real hands. And I put the book down and I thought, when those cyclical things happen, you think, okay, this message is for me and this is a truth that you need to embrace. And so I feel very successful in having some time to think, some time to cook, some time to clean. I mean, I'm just really enjoying doing my laundry, right? Like, this is so nice. Usually I send it out. Now I get to fold my own clothes and just spend time with myself. And for someone who's been on the run for the last 2 decades, I feel very successful in the quiet and the solitude and my baby steps into meditation, which are horrible, but they'll get better.
Have you given it a little test run yet? The meditation practice?
Yeah, I'm still theorizing about it. I've read the book a couple times, and I've been listening to, that's so funny that you know that people don't just jump in after they read it.
No,
I'm still thinking about it, and I'm scared because I don't want to fail. So crazy, huh? Mm-hmm. But I've read the book a couple times now. I've been listening to the podcast. There's another thing you do, a meditation thing. It's online. I found it on Instagram, and trying to get there.
Okay.
I'll let you know when I hit it.
Awesome. I want to offer some reflections about some of the things you talked about. And this is probably the most direct correlation between someone's favorite activity as a child and what they're doing now, in the sense that you actually have a Barbie doll.
That's right.
How does that?
I told you cycles. I told you.
You started playing with Barbies, and now there's an Ava DuVernay Barbie doll.
I know. I'm telling you, when I say cycles, I really see them. It wasn't just a cool thing to have a Barbie. Like, I know a couple other people have Barbies. They're like, oh, it's cool to have Barbies. What I'm telling you is I loved Barbies. I have one in my likeness. I'm looking at it right now. I just want to rip open the box and play with her. But
right.
That wouldn't be appropriate at my age in the house by myself.
Also, what it represented, like you playing with your sisters, you creating and basically storytelling and improvising, making it work, using shoes, using whatever was there to tell that story. And that's something that obviously has shown up now in your life, where you've created this life for yourself on the basis of improvising and being innovative. And I didn't know that you read my book. I didn't know that. So it makes a little more sense now. Yeah, I honestly didn't know how we connected, but
the gram, everything happens through the gram.
But you're big on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter at all. And I've been thinking about getting bigger, going on Twitter more.
You have a Twitter account?
I do have a Twitter account.
It's automated. It's horrible. I'll show you.
I don't know it. And I want to know it more than I do. So yeah. I'm inspired by that. Yeah. But anyway, I find you to be incredibly gracious, especially with everything you have going on. And, all of our exchanges have been very, very lovely. And I've seen a lot of your interviews and videos. And even when you're in rooms doing Q&A with like 10 people, and you're just always like, thank you very much for that question. That's such a great question, and it's just the grace. It's just like, and it's authentic. It's not like Hollywood grace. It's like real. I'm really happy to be here. And I think a part of that is because you've been in so many different aspects of the spectrum of, being an admirer and a fan to being a creator, that you have an appreciation for people just showing up and just being there. Mm-hmm. And you never take that for granted. And I think that's beautiful.
When people come.
I think that's beautiful.
I think a lot of it has to be from getting into it much older.
Yes, that's exactly what, yeah.
I think that might be just an appreciation for it. And the likelihood of it all happening being so minuscule. The likelihood of a 32-year-old publicist who'd never gone to film school ending up making films when a few years ago, I didn't even know how to turn on the camera. It's so unlikely that it blows my mind every day. And
it's incredible. You've had clear angels in your life, which is also a common thing. Your Aunt Den is like your guardian angel, right? She was the one that kind of helped you recognize your path. And I'm just curious, what do you think she would say now? If you got a chance to have a conversation like this with her, what would she say about everything?
I can't wait till that day. I feel like she's active in my life. I feel like she's guiding me and making so much of it happen, her and my father. And I just, she loved movies so much. Sometimes when I'm on a set or at a premiere, at a film festival or wherever, I think, gosh, she would love this. And she would be right there with me. And I just have to always tell myself she is right there with you. Mm-hmm. She's experiencing it. And so I can't wait till the day we can sit down and have that conversation face to face. But I know that she'd be loving it. She'd be giving me a lot of advice. I wonder sometimes, what would she instruct me to do different than what I'm doing? You know what I mean? Or what would she say that maybe would have pushed me in a different direction because I thought so highly of her opinion? Would she say, don't make Selma? Don't do that.
Can you imagine?
Who knows? You never know.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure she'd be proud nonetheless. And while you're well known for 13th and Selma and all that, I do recommend people go back and look at the earlier work as well, because you can, there's such beautiful stories. And I think some of the most beautiful stories are told before somebody is known for telling stories. And I saw that a lot in your work. Well, Ava, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
This has been revelatory for me because I'm not in therapy, so I don't really think of circles and cycles in life and have these kinds of conversations. So it's been so helpful to me, instructive and impressive. Also, I think that you can be a meditation guru / world-class interviewer.
I've always been so curious about the motivations and the intentions behind. I don't care about what you did or what awards you won. I want to know why you decided to do that. Like, who was the influence in your life, and how did you end up in the room with that person, and all the backstory. Like, that's what I've been so passionate about my whole life. So now I've created a way to have an excuse to ask people those questions. So I'm appreciative that you gave me that opportunity to ask you those questions. Thank you for listening to my interview with Emmy Award-winning director Ava Duvernay. If you haven't already seen it, you can check out her latest series, Queen Sugar, on Hulu. And don't forget to hop on Netflix to watch her documentary, 13th, plus Selma, and When They See Us, and all of the rest. You should also follow Ava on Twitter and Instagram. She's quite active on social media, and her posts are always potent and inspiring. And as you heard, Ava's story of becoming a successful director was an unlikely one, right? She didn't go to film school. She didn't have any formal training. She wasn't the ideal color or gender or age, but she had plenty of resolve. And those are the stories that I love to tell on At the End of the Tunnel. Stories of hope, stories of underdogs, the hero's journey. And if you want to hear more of those stories, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast and check out the archive. I've got so many other interviews with amazing people who've overcome all kinds of crazy challenges in order to start their movement and follow their purpose. Even though the guests are all different, the common thread between every episode is how their obstacle helped to guide them to their movement. And my hope is that the people who listen to these interviews begin to see their obstacles as gateways to their path and their purpose. And if you like what you hear, please rate and review the podcast. It helps other listeners discover these inspirational stories. And as always, you can find everything that Ava and I discussed in the show notes, as well as a transcript of our entire interview on my website, which is lightwatkins.com/tunnel. That's lightwatkins.com/tunnel. While you're there, make sure you sign up for my daily dose of inspiration email, where I send out short and sweet daily motivational messages every morning just to help you start your day. And if you have any feedback or suggestions, feel free to text it to me. I'll give you my phone number. Are you ready? Okay, 323-405-9166. That's 323-405-9166. Send me a message. And make sure you put your information in my phone so I know who's texting me and where you're texting me from. All right. Thanks again for listening to another episode. And I'll see you next week with the next conversation from the end of the tunnel.